Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Huobi Nation, welcome to Huobi Podcast. What is Huobi Podcast? Huobi Podcast will keep you updated on news and events in the cryptocurrency industry. We'll also invite some key influencers to provide their take on the industry, share their insights and their story on how they became a success. Changing the world through blockchain technology. Up next is Ivan on Tech. Ivan is running the biggest blockchain academy, educating smart money. He also runs a YouTube channel called Good Morning Crypto, where he has around 210,000 subscribers. We'll discuss Ethereum 2.0, the Bitcoin halving, and much more. Stay tuned to listen to it.
Hello, Huobi Nation. We have a special honored guest for today's show. His name is Ivan. People call him Ivan on Tech. I'm sure you know about him unless you live under a rock. But Ivan, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much. A great pleasure to be here with you. And thank you so much for inviting me to Huobi Podcast. That's amazing.
Great to have you, man. Really appreciate taking time out. Everyone wants to know something. And every time you start, Good Morning Crypto, you always say what you're drinking. But I really want to know what's in that coffee, man, because you do so many shows. You're everywhere in the community. So what is really in that coffee?
Well, in that coffee, it's a lot of passion, positivity. It's just that crypto is so large as a community and so many different things going on. So it's always something to discuss and it's always something interesting. That's the most important thing. There's always something exciting, whether it is that we have new projects, new coins, new technology, new regulation, new monetary theories. I mean, it's so many topics. That is why I think so many people are attracted to crypto, because whether you like politics, social science, whether you want to be at the forefront of financial regulation, it's all here for you. And really, this industry is disrupting the most important and biggest industry that is due for disruption, which is the financial industry. It's really, really due for disruption. And there is so much we can do there. And that's why I think crypto attracts so many great people, and that's why I'm so passionate about it. It's always a pleasure to talk about crypto, and I am blessed to be able to do it every day.
Nice. Yeah, it sounds like a lot of things are in that coffee. A lot of passion, man. So I mean,
exactly.
I can't even know how many ingredients are in there, but yeah, man. I'm glad that you're hyped up. So that's good. Everyone knows you from the show, but when you meet someone for the first time and maybe they know a little bit about you, can you tell them, what do you tell them? Do you just say, I'm Ivan on Tech, or what do you say?
Well, it depends who. People ask me sometimes what they work with, and depending on whether I have time or really the willingness to explain to them everything I do. Sometimes I just say I work with YouTube. Sometimes I say I work with finance. But really, my journey started as a developer. I'm a developer at the roots, at its core, and I've been always passionate about programming. I started programming when I was 9 years old, and I was really passionate about learning all kinds of technologies, whether it's web development, whether it's mobile development. It really felt like magic. That when I learned programming as a kid, it felt like magic, because I could do things other people could not, and you can achieve so many great things by writing code. And that developed into some projects, into some side hustles, but it was only a hobby at that point. And then I started to work professionally. I worked in a big multinational company called Ericsson here in Sweden. I went to computer science program here at KTH in Stockholm, university program. And sooner or later, I found also my passion for crypto, and that was in 2013. And since then, I've been putting most of my free time, most of my spare time into this industry and trying to learn as much as possible and understand as much as possible, because I truly felt from the start this is going to change the world. And it felt that putting time into this is a good investment. Although I entered at the end of 2013, right when we had the last bull market peak. The bull market peak before the 2017 bull market peak was in 2013, right when I entered the crypto space. And I bought at the very top. I was a noob in crypto, so I bought at the very top when we reached $1,000 for one Bitcoin. And then everything completely collapsed to approximately $200. So basically lost 80% of the money. And that's how it is for most people. I think when you enter crypto, you always enter in some kind of FOMO wave. You hear in the media, or you hear your Uber driver talk about crypto. So you always enter at the point where there is a lot of speculation, a lot of hype, and that's usually a bad time to invest. That is when you maybe should be taking profits if you're not thinking even more long term, and you're really here for a long term. But anyway, for me, it didn't really matter that we collapsed, because I was so passionate about this technology and how it is changing finance, changing even the way internet works and the way we do business online. Because you had Ethereum releasing in 2015, and that introduced a whole new dimension to crypto, a whole new dimension to blockchain, with smart contracts and programmable blockchains. So it was just so much to learn, so much to absorb. And I started doing YouTube videos in 2017. So that's 4 years after I actually discovered crypto. And for me, it was just a fun thing. I actually started talking about programming in the beginning, and then I also wanted to share my passion for crypto, and that really started to grow a lot. When I started to talk about my passion for crypto, the YouTube channel completely exploded, and went basically from a few thousand to now over 200,000 in 3 years. But most of those subscribers actually came during 2017 and 18 times. And what's interesting to see now in 2020 is that we're seeing a similar development, that subscribers are increasing faster and faster. Interest is bigger than ever, and that's very interesting to follow right now. I think we're living through very interesting times in Bitcoin history.
Yeah, the FOMO is real, right?
Absolutely.
It's awesome that you're coder, because like I know a lot of people in the space maybe want to code, but they maybe don't take the steps and the skill and talent to have.
Yeah, and that's also why I'm so passionate about education, because I see what you just said. So many people want to start programming. So that's why we created Ivan Tech Academy, where we teach people programming from scratch, and then programming on Ethereum, on EOS, on Bitcoin. Because as I told you, you are literally becoming a magician. You get this superpower that you can create your own apps. You don't need to get a developer. You don't need to pay someone a lot of money to just build your proof of concept for a project. So I truly feel that more and more people should be at least considering learning how to code.
What kind of a code do you use, like HTML? What's your favorite code?
Well, when I started developing, it was actually HTML. My mom bought me an HTML book when I was 9. And at that time, I felt that if I just finished this book, I know programming. That is at least how it felt like, because on the book cover, it said, read this book and learn how to create websites. So I thought, okay, I read this book. When I finish it, I will be able to create any website. But then you quickly understand that, look, HTML is amazing, but it's no logic. You cannot write any logic. You cannot script your website. It's just a markup, how this website should be structured. So that's actually what drove me further, because then I wanted to learn JavaScript, and then I developed further into Java and C++ and others. In our academy, we actually start with HTML and JavaScript, because we want people to understand the basics, and the best way to learn how to code, according to me, is to do JavaScript, because you can quickly create things that other people can see, and you can quickly show off your skills to your friends, to your family. And that's why JavaScript is my favorite way to teach. I mean, also you can do Python, you can do Java. The biggest mistake most people make is that they think too much about which language to pick. That is the biggest mistake. They're considering for months, should I pick JavaScript or Java or Python? But in reality, just pick anything. My personal favorite is JavaScript, and that's how we teach in our academy. And once you know JavaScript, it's quite easy to start with Solidity, which is a programming language used for programming Ethereum, but also so many other blockchains, like Tron, for example, because so many other blockchains just take the execution environment from Ethereum, and it means that you can basically use the same language to program a bunch of other blockchains, because they basically take open source code that Ethereum has written. So Solidity gives you a lot of possibilities in crypto, and I think that's the first language you should try to learn when you go from, for example, just knowing JavaScript or just knowing Java or Python, and you go into crypto. I would really recommend starting with Solidity.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, people maybe fixate over what they should do with the languages, but just go for it, right? Don't think so much.
Yeah, because they're all the same. At the end of the day, it's all the same logic, all the same concepts, concepts, all the same reasoning, just that you write it in slightly different ways. And obviously some languages have some strengths that other languages don't, but they're so small, like these differences are so small. For a beginner, it doesn't matter. It literally doesn't matter. And once you know a language, learning the second language is a very quick process. It's a very quick process. So that's why we start with JavaScript in our academy and then quickly into Solidity. And if you want to continue, we quickly teach you C++. And it's so easy for you because you already know Solidity, you already know JavaScript. So it's way easier to just pick up a bunch of other languages. And most programmers, they know a bunch of languages. 5 to 10 languages is not uncommon. Why? Because they're all the same. It's basically just small differences. And learning how to adapt your coding style to new languages, it's not a complicated process.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, just go for it and start at the foundation, build the foundation and grow. I'm talking about foundation. I know you're kind of been in the crypto community for a very, very long time. You know, you outlasted some of the coins, some of the coin communities. And like people would always ask me, like, how do you build the community? Because that's number one thing about crypto I like is the community. So what is your secret sauce for like building the community?
Well, community is very important. And I think vision is a very important part of the community. Community needs most often to have some kind of leadership. Now, for example, it doesn't need to be even a person. Look at Bitcoin. It's a community. It has leadership, really. It has leadership because you have the white paper. You have Satoshi that everyone is referring to. That leader is not even present, but it's so powerful that people are still uniting around Bitcoin. And you look at, for example, different religions, they also have some kind of leader, but that leader is either, in people's minds. Many people believe in gods, in different prophets, and they might be real for them, but they're not physically here. So that's very important to understand that you need some kind of common shared idea, you need some kind of passion, you need some kind of vision, and you need some kind of leader. So that's key. And that leader doesn't even need to be real or physical. And then another important part is that you have some kind of goal. So our goal is to reshape how money works, to make money more fair, more accessible. And this creates this common task. This also creates an interesting group dynamic where it feels like it's us against the world. And that's also something that keeps community together. So there are many different things. Rituals is a very important thing for a community. So you have, for example, the halving, big ritual. You have proof of keys, 3rd of January, big ritual. You need to have internal jokes and internal memes. I mean, memes are very big when it comes to community. Whether it is hodl, whether it's over 9,000, you know, this meme when Bitcoin goes over 9,000. Whether it is mocking peer shift. I mean, it's whatever you can unite people around. You need to have some kind of tradition, some kind of internal language that only we understand, but people outside our community don't. And then we humans, we like to be in groups. We like to be, we like belonging to a group. And so in crypto, you have our crypto community. We're one group, and then you have the outsiders, kind of, you know, the no coiners and the people who are actually fighting against us. And for us, it's important that our group grows, that we convert a lot of no coiners who have no idea about Bitcoin, or maybe they're opposed Bitcoin, but then you explain to them, they understand. So it's this group, us versus them dynamic is actually sometimes important to keep groups together. But yeah, I mean, a lot of things, even though we can drop by 50% in a day, still the community is here. The community doesn't go away. Like we saw in March, we dropped by 50%. We've now recovered all of those losses, and we've even gone to new all-time highs for this year, at least very soon. And you see that our community, we can survive anything because the fundamentals of this community are so strong.
Yeah. So like, just to recap, so like you're saying, like leadership, have to have a good vision, culture, and have to be able to go over us versus them. So that's kind of interesting.
I mean, yes, some kind of such mechanic needs to be in place, that we are a group and we're fighting for something, and we have some kind of resistance that we're meeting. And if we wouldn't have, for example, different regulations trying to shut us down, or for example, the banking system trying to make it more difficult for us, for example, by banning bank accounts who do anything with crypto, I don't think that we would have such strong identity at the end, identity that we're here together and we're doing something good for the world. But then the world also wouldn't have these problems that we're fixing. So it's very good to have this community that is united, and we're going towards the same direction, and we're trying to make the world a better place.
You know, within communities, you have people maybe who don't like you. Some people call them trolls. How do you like deal with those people?
So what's important to realize is that the trolls or haters are very important, especially in social media. They're very important for you, and they're actually good for you, because someone who truly passionately hates you for some reason, it can be the way you talk, or that you have a following and they don't, or they feel that you said something and they don't, whatever, it doesn't matter. They will be actually watching you more than your average supporter, because they will be rewatching the videos and they're gonna be irritated. They're gonna watch 5-6 times. They're gonna always check up on you, like, what are you doing? Can I comment something? Can I point something that you're doing wrong? So they actually give a lot of engagement. And if you don't do anything that is significant, you won't get haters. But when you do something that is significant, you get them automatically. And look at anyone in crypto. Everyone has somebody that doesn't like them, everyone who is at least known. So it's just natural. And by the way, you should be striving towards that. It means that you matter in one way or another. Now, obviously, we all have very limited energy. And for me to read the hate comments, I don't have that, because obviously, even though we want not to be affected, when you read garbage, you get affected. Like, you get emotional. It's no question about that. So for me on YouTube, I usually just block them. Like, this, like a button, you hide from the channel. And what's brilliant about that function is that these people don't even recognize that they are shadow banned. They continue to write, they continue to like comment every day. Nobody can read that, and except them. But what's good is that I forget. Look, after a month, I don't even remember who said what, who is who, and maybe I blocked someone by mistake. So once upon a month, like once every 2 months, I usually clear the block list. And I'm always surprised that the guy I blocked 3 months ago is still writing. He's still here. I haven't seen him for 3 months, but now I cleared the block list. He's still here. So yeah, I removed them again, because sometimes you have people who hate in the beginning, but then they watch you and then they start liking you. So you have some converters as well. That might happen. And on Twitter, you can. I usually mute on Twitter, because that's also amazing. You don't even see them; they still contribute. And look, before I did more blocking. Now I usually don't block. I just mute, because you realize also from an engagement perspective, it's actually good to have a bit of like hate, because it's a bit of drama. We humans will like dramas. Other people will go and read like, oh, here's someone attacking Ivan. Oof, maybe Ivan will respond. Ivan doesn't even see it because Ivan has muted, I'm telling you, but it's still good. It's still good. So I think having this approach has worked the best, and it has taken years to develop this approach, because from the beginning, obviously, when you are a new YouTuber, you're new on Twitter, you start replying to everyone. You start, you think that you can explain yourself, but in many cases you cannot, and it's just a losing battle. Look, my team and I, we don't really care, but we think they are amazing. So big shout out to everyone who is commenting bad stuff. That's okay. Good stuff, even better. And as long as your psyche doesn't see it, that's good. So, but I would always recommend everyone to either mute or block them so that you don't see it, because obviously it takes energy, it takes time.
Completely agree. Like, if you give too much attention to them, they actually win, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And sometimes you have people like saying something and then they want me to interview them on their channel so that I can kind of defend. So you have some people also trying to get some exposure that I will now engage in some kind of public battle, but never. No.
So I watched your Good Morning Crypto a lot, because
Nice.
see what's going on. And one of the episodes I just watched recently was you talking about Ethereum 2.0. And
Right.
And it was coming, and it seems more complicated than most people thought. And you were talking about like how you foresee some kind of delays and everything.
Yeah.
Do you think that Ethereum 2.0 will happen this year? I mean, what's your thoughts about that? Why or why not?
Yeah, I do think it will happen, because Ethereum 2.0 will launch in many phases. So phase 0 is just the beacon chain. So you only can deposit ETH and you can be part of staking, but it doesn't really have sharding. It doesn't really have all the features. So that will absolutely happen. But when it comes to the full vision, that might be delayed for months or even years. years. And all software projects are usually delayed because the developers underestimate how much time it will take to complete the project. And it's so easy to set deadlines that seem reasonable in the beginning, but then you realize it's way more complicated, and there are many issues with that plan. And so that's why it's a common theme among all software that gets delayed. So I just expect that to happen. I do think that this year we will see Beacon Chain. It is scheduled for July. And even if they get delayed, they have still 6 months to do it this year. So I'm pretty confident about that. Now, the next phase with phase one, that might be a bit longer. But at the end of the day, the most important thing to get going is phase zero, so we get the Beacon Chain. And then we can start talking about the next one. So I think it will happen this year, the phase zero. And then you'll have phase one, and then you'll have phase two. And depending on how that will go, we'll see different timelines, because phase one is going to be sharding. So that's when you're going to have different shards. And the idea is that the main net right now, which is Ethereum 1.0, it will be one of the shards. And the whole idea with sharding is that not all nodes will process all transactions. You will have different kind of sub networks, and each shard is kind of a sub network. So that will be in phase one. And then phase two will add this all smart contracts and all other features that we expect from Ethereum 2.0. So that's the plan, at least.
Great. I mean, glad to hear that you're updated on that. It's hard to keep track, so I'm glad that you're here, keeps me.
Yeah, and they change it all the time.
Is Bitcoin overpriced in your opinion?
Absolutely not. And the price doesn't really matter. It is the market cap that matters. And obviously they're connected. But sometimes people stare too much on the price, and for them it feels like $9,000 is a lot. But then you look at market cap, we're only at 170 billion. That's absolutely nothing. The US government will borrow from the Fed 3 trillion in the second quarter of 2020 alone. So look, we're only at 170 billion, and the US government will print in the next few months. By borrowing from the Fed, they're gonna basically create 3 trillion. So look, we're so far away from our goal, and we're so early still. So that's why when you go to $100,000 for one Bitcoin, look, we're just at 2.1 trillion. It's still less than what US government borrowed in the second quarter of 2020. And because they will borrow 3 trillion. You look at all other assets, gold between 10 and 15 trillion, depending on how you count, whether you count paper or just physical gold, between 10 and 15. And look, if Bitcoin goes to 100,000, we're just at 2.1 trillion. It's still small. So even at 100,000, I would feel that Bitcoin is still very small compared to the potential. I mean, end goal is that we are somewhere around where gold is right now, 10 trillion. But that will be like $200,000 to $300,000 for one Bitcoin. And I know it sounds so big now. It sounds insane to many people, and it's so big, such big numbers. But how else do you calculate the potential of Bitcoin? What is the potential of Bitcoin? For me, it is a macro asset. It is digital gold. And if we conclude that, all right, it is digital gold, let's compare to gold, let's compare to silver, let's compare to some other macro assets of that magnitude. And we quickly start talking about trillions. Because what kind of macro asset is below 1 trillion? Not a lot of assets that matter are below a trillion. And to go to a trillion, the price needs to be approximately 50K for one Bitcoin. And that is still so low. 1 trillion is also nothing. We go to 100,000 for one Bitcoin, we're at 2.1. So maybe fair price of Bitcoin is approximately 300 to 400. So that would put us on par with gold, where gold is today. So that's why absolutely, I think it's very cheap. It's extremely cheap.
That's a good prediction in comparison to something commodities or other. That's interesting.
To interrupt you, but look at Jeff Bezos, look at Bill Gates. You put them two together, you have market cap more than Bitcoin. I mean, is that, and some people say it's expensive now. It's absolutely not in my view. But could we dump? Of course, Bitcoin is very volatile. Of course, we could dump like crazy in the next months. We dumped 50% in March. We can have extreme volatility, both upwards and downwards. But here we're talking about long-term potential.
if there was no Bitcoin, like what would you be holding like right now? Like
Yeah, I would be holding ETH, to be honest. ETH is it's also a no-brainer with DeFi and decentralized banking and open banking, more correctly to say, where you have synthetics, derivatives, lending, all of that on chain. So ETH, absolutely. Looking at other coins, I mean, most of other coins are still in the experiment stage, and ETH is also experiment. Bitcoin is also experiment, but at least they have something that is tangible and is working, and you can use every day for real use cases that are impossible outside of these currencies. A lot of other currencies, they try to be something similar. They try to replace ETH, and maybe some of them will be successful, but that's going to be difficult because ETH is building this liquidity that is very difficult to replicate, even though you have maybe better technology or better programming language or whatever you have. It's that liquidity. People have so much money in ETH.
Before I asked people on Twitter if they had any questions for you, and I got a bunch. So let's. I'm just going to go through them and give a shout out to the people who asked the question. From Crypto Sith Lord, what is the best thing about Good Morning Crypto, and what is the worst thing about Good Morning Crypto?
Well, the best thing I would say is the chat, is the community. We have the community going, we have the chat. So many great questions come from the chat, and so many topics come from the chat as well. So that's amazing. I really love the chat and that people are watching live. So that's key. And we're always live streaming on ivantek.com/live. So it's our own website, and we have our own chat because we don't live stream on YouTube now. We just re-upload the replay. So that's the best thing. I mean, the worst thing is, I don't know if there's anything worse. I mean, the worst thing is when something technically doesn't work. Like if the internet provider has a blackout. We've had like 1 or 2 times that, because we've been live streaming for almost 3 years soon. So we've been dealing with all kinds of random events. For example, we had just our ISP die, no internet. That was terrible. Another time, like screens don't work. Also happened just one time. I mean, look, when you do so many streams each and every day, sometimes 2 times a day, you always will experience these low probability problems, because just by doing so much, you increase the chances that it will happen sooner or later. So that is the worst thing. When look, I've prepared the episode, I am pumped, I'm ready to go, and then some kind of technicality does it, or something wrong with the microphone. So that is the worst when that happens.
That makes sense. Like you can't control everything. You can only prepare yourself as much as you can.
Exactly.
You know, the same person asked, have you ever had your hacked into your crypto? Have you ever had your crypto stolen?
No, the good thing is never. And
good.
hopefully we will not see that. Yeah.
All right. Another person asked, beloved Yo Mifola, what is your motivation to start the academy, and who is your target audience? I'm guessing that your motivation is to educate the community, but who's your target audience?
Yeah, I mean, the motivation is that we've seen a lot of people going to universities, and in many cases they have been scammed, unfortunately, into hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt. They haven't really got anything from that university, and unfortunately this system is still in place. I think the educational system will change the most in the next decade. It is the financial and the educational system that really need to change as soon as possible. So really our goal is more long term. It's actually really being a big part of the e-learning space, because I feel that the way education works will change forever. And we obviously, I mean, this kind of thinking has developed with time from the beginning, and right now it's only blockchain. And we've now developing we have all kinds of courses already about programming, about finance, about DeFi, about EOS, Ethereum, about Bitcoin, Lightning Network. I mean, so much. We have courses for everyone. The target audience is whether you want to start building your own projects, you want to understand how this works, or whether you already work in a corporation and you just want to excel. Maybe you want to lead the blockchain department in your corporation. So for example, the head of blockchain at Ericsson, this multi-billion multinational corporation I worked at previously, and you remember maybe Sony Ericsson, it was huge before the iPhone. So look, he is our alumni. So Giovanni, who is head of blockchain at Ericsson, he also had this mindset. All right, I'm working at Ericsson. How can I become head of blockchain? So he took our academy. We also have people starting to program from scratch and going from absolute zero to being employed full-time or building their own projects and their own businesses. And then it's just people who are curious about what crypto is, how does it work, why it's important, what are the economics. So we have a lot of courses, and the good thing is that you get personalized study plans. So when you sign up, you tell us about your goals in a quiz. You fill out the quiz, You get personalized study plan with all the courses we recommend you to take. And also you get connected with a personal study counselor. So if you have any issues, you just contact them and they will answer you very quickly. So it's basically your personal assistant guiding you through the academy. So that's our mission, that's our passion, and that's how we think the future of education will be like. And who knows, maybe we'll branch out into other topics, maybe technology, maybe other things. But for now, it's really Bitcoin, really crypto, really blockchain, and there's so much to do. So to summarize, whether you want to learn how to program, how to build things, or excel in your current career, or just learn what crypto is, well, you should go to academy.iwantech.com.
Awesome. Yeah, it's a wide target audience, and it's for everyone. It seems like you have a very progressive academy. It's interesting.
Yep.
Someone on Twitter, his name is MBOM Silver. He asked, do you think KYC is a defeating privacy and decentralization of cryptocurrencies?
I think KYC is inevitable. It will be here, and crypto we will have to adopt. At least in the Western world, it's not a question about it. It will be enforced. Now, whether it is defeating the purpose, I don't think so, because at the end of the day, you don't have to use the centralized services, because look, KYC is only in centralized services. If you don't like KYC, you don't think it's for you, well, then you can just work for crypto and get paid directly into your wallet. So crypto is on its own works perfectly outside of the centralized services. So therefore, I don't really feel that it's somehow hindering, especially now with DeFi. You can do a lot of business you usually do through centralized entities. You can do on-chain without KYC. So I think it is inevitable. If you have a company and you are an exchange or you are some kind of service provider, you will be regulated or you will face consequences. And to be honest with you, which exchange? If you, let's say you own an exchange, do you want to risk going to prison because you didn't do KYC? Of course not. You're going to do all regulation, or you're going to move somewhere else. So some countries may be having more relaxed regulations than others. Sure. But that will create, that is, I mean, I don't think it will work out because that will mean that some exchanges will be able to send funds to some exchanges, but not all exchanges. Because, for example, in Europe, we will soon have the regulation where if an exchange wants to send funds from one account to another account in another exchange, let's say I have two exchanges and I want to transfer funds between my two accounts on two exchanges. Well, then the first exchange needs to communicate everything they know about me to the second exchange, just like the banks do. All transactions, they need to have all information about the recipient and the sender. So if you have that in the EU, the US, of course, the US will also have a lot of regulation. They are really the harshest when it comes to financial regulation today, if you look at the banking space. So they will also have something similar. So it means that if you have an exchange that is outside US and EU and they don't have this KYC, it means that the US and EU exchanges cannot receive funds from those exchanges outside that don't follow the same standards. So I think at the end of the day, everyone will have KYC if you are an exchange, but DeFi, that is where people can still do whatever they want really, as long as the technology supports it. And there, obviously, it's just a protocol. So obviously there is no KYC in DeFi.
Yeah, so it has to be a natural progression, because if it doesn't go to that way, it's always going to be like iffy. It's going to be a gray area, right? So it's kind of the evolution of cryptocurrency. I think so.
Yes,
makes sense.
It's inevitable. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
He also asked, who is one person in crypto that you haven't met that you want to meet other than Satoshi Nakamoto?
Well, I haven't met Mike Novogratz. That would be good.
Why do you want to meet?
Yeah, I've met.
Any reason you want to meet Mike Novogratz?
Well, yeah, because he's from financial, traditional industry. He has a lot of expertise in finance. He is also very influential in crypto. Tim Draper is another one. Tim Draper is another one that I really like, that I also would like to meet. But otherwise, I've met so many people in crypto. You go to conferences for 3 years, you meet most of the people, because it's basically the same people in all conferences.
Sure.
But yeah, those are the two I would say: Mike Novogratz and Tim Draper.
Nice. Yeah, that's a good answers. I've never met both of those either, but I've seen them at a lot of conferences.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Yeah. We have a guy by the name of Supra Minsa. He says he misses the crypto project explainer videos with the whiteboard that you used to do.
Right.
You know, that whiteboard that you used to write with and
explain
everything?
Yeah. I remember.
Is there a reason why you cut it out, or is it just because you're doing other things?
Well, we have the studio now, so Maybe I will use the whiteboard just for nostalgia, but it's just that we have the studio, and now I use my drawing pad, so I draw digitally now. But when we didn't have the studio, then I used this paper whiteboard. Like, it's not a whiteboard; it's basically paper. I don't know how to call it, but it's like paper, huge paper block, and you can draw on it. So we used it way in the back 2017. Basically, that was a good time. So I have a nostalgia from that time as well.
So you got better technology, right? Basically using more updated
Exactly,
technology.
exactly,
Um,
exactly.
Something else he asked is, do you have any special human tricks that you do and that maybe people don't know about, like juggling, or can you do anything that's different than someone else?
So I'm good at swimming. I've been swimming for years and years and years as a teenager in high school, and before that, good at bench press. So those are the two things. Yeah, I can do with my body.
Nice. And as far as Good Morning Crypto in like 5 years, what do you envision? How do you envision the show growing up? Like, I mean, what do you see in 5 years it going to be like? Do you think it's going to be the same as it is today?
It's so difficult to say, to be honest, how it's going to be in 5 years, because Good Morning Crypto is an amazing thing, and I want to keep doing it for as long as possible. And I think if I find ways to develop it, then of course, or we will just do how it is right now. I mean, really, I don't know how technology will develop. Maybe we can have some other tech for doing live streams. Maybe something will change, but all in all, I hope to bring even better content, even better analysis, even better